Hey guys, it's Eric with LeatherSeats.com. In today's tech tip video, we're going to install some new headrest covers on some factory leather foam injected headrests. With a normal headrest installation, we would just remove the factory upholstery, which would expose the molded foam underneath. We would then stick that on the headrest shrinker, shrink it down, install the new headrest cover, and be done with it. In this case, since this is foam injected from the factory, we really can't do that. The foam injection process is basically where they sew up a traditional headrest cover, then they stick it inside a mold and inject it with two chemicals. Those two chemicals react and become the soft foam that you can filling up the headrest cover. The downside is that chemical reaction causes the foam to weld itself to the back side of the upholstery. That makes it pretty much impossible to remove this cover without doing some significant damage to the headrest foam itself. The other downside is that the foam injection process causes the headrest to become really stiff and rigid, which makes it harder for the headrest shrinker to compress it, and that makes it harder to actually get the headrest cover on. Now, some of you may be wondering why I removed the panels on some parts of the headrest and not others. I can tell you it's not an exact science, but we've been dealing with these foam injection headrests for years, and in my experience, I at least want to remove the panels from underneath the headrest to expose the foam there, and then I'll usually remove one other panel on the back of the headrest as well. And that kind of optimizes the power of the suction to get this headrest to compress, and that's going to make it easier to get the headrest cover on without ripping anything. But before we move to installing, I want to go ahead and trim some of the sewing salvage on the inside of this headrest cover to make it fit a little bit cleaner. This step isn't actually required for the install, but it does make for a cleaner install, especially on these foam injected headrests. If you are going to trim the salvage, I would suggest being really careful to not cut any deeper than about 1/8 of an inch from the seam, and that's going to allow that seam to maintain its structural integrity. And notice I'm not cutting through this where this double stitch seam comes down. If I were to trim through that, at least on the seam side of it, that would compromise the strength of the lock stitch that holds that end of the seam together. So I'm going to leave that at full length. Same goes for over here. And this seam isn't double stitched, but it is intersecting essentially kind of at a 90-degree angle here to the bottom seam, so I definitely do not want to trim that. There's a lock stitch here at the end that actually creates structural integrity at the end, and if I cut through here, you know, there's more of a chance that seam could come undone, so there's no real advantage to trimming that. Now I could trim this underside because there's no seam there. I also want to be really careful that as I'm cutting that I don't get something pinched up here on the side I can't see and then end up cutting through the headrest. There's a lot of ways you can do some serious damage if you're not careful when you're doing this. As I approach the top, stop there, clip across. Gotta be careful not to clip too deep. Don't want to cut that lock stitch there, and I don't want to cut into where this seam actually meets the double stitch seam. As I was coming up here, I could feel actually with my fingers that this material here was trying to get in the way. So, you know, I keep pushing it back as I go, but just if you're gonna do it, you definitely need to go slow and make sure you're not, you know, accidentally clipping something you shouldn't. All right, so that's all trimmed up and we are ready to go ahead and install the headrest cover. Now I'm going to turn the headrest back right side out and we will throw a bag over this headrest core. I am going to throw some steam into the bottom of this headrest just to warm it up, soften up the leather and the vinyl here at the back and bottom. Heating this up is definitely going to make it easier to install, and I'm going to be much less likely to rip anything as I'm pulling over this, you know, rigid headrest. All right guys, hopefully you found this tech tip video to be helpful. If you did enjoy the content, be sure to leave a comment below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about installation, be sure to email us at sales@LeatherSeats.com or you can give us a call toll free at 866-NEW-SEAT. Thanks for watching and we'll see you next time.